Good morning, party people, and welcome to a speed round of office hours. Oh, do I still have my speed round button? I should probably turn that down because that's probably deafening. I was listening to loud music here this morning, so it's probably deafening on your end. I do speed rounds when there are a series of questions that are pretty straightforward in order to answer. Hey, Soren says, hi, hi. Well, I remember I wanted to thank you for your great work and thank you for sharing it with everybody. You're welcome. My pleasure. Where did my rings go? I just realized I don't have my rings on. Montrose says, good morning or good afternoon, Brent. Good morning for my side, Montrose. I know that you've got a pull request outstanding, and I was debating whether or not I was going to live stream that today. I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm going to do it today. I just don't think I'm going to live stream it. Usually I try to work with the garage door open as, oh my God, it looked like I was flashing you. I try to work with the garage door open, as they say, but today I don't think I will, just because I'm dabbling across a whole bunch of stuff, getting ready for the holidays. So it is Friday, the Friday before Christmas, getting ready to be done for a long weekend. I work for myself. I don't really have the concept of weekdays versus weekends. It's just that I work when I want to work and when things line up with clients. But I don't feel like working at all over the next few days. I'm going to go goof off and enjoy the holidays with friends. And my family's all up in Illinois and Michigan. I can't quite get up there. We're going to get up there around January. But I'm going to go play Dead by Daylight because there's a Christmas event going on, or a holiday event going on, and they have like snowballs and stuff. Should zoom this in a little bit here so I can see y'all's chat a little easier. Tom says, hey Brent, happy holidays. Woo! Finally got working, but still here to watch the genius at work. Well, when you find the genius, let me know so I can watch him as well. Says, you've helped me greatly with this year with all the free training content, so have some bits. Thank you. I appreciate it. Very cool. I've been meaning to get, did it work? Oh, it did work. I've been meaning to get more of the like bits and channel points type stuff set up. We'll see how that goes. Atlantic says he's off for the next 2 weeks. Wow, no Dead by Daylight, 7 days to die for me, though. Also, I love the Bourdain artwork. That is by Cassie Ott, an artist out of North Carolina, I believe. And she's done several celebrity paintings. One of them is... several of them are Anthony Bourdain, and she just does a fantastic job. I have another one of hers of Anthony Bourdain down by my bar, actually, in the house too as well. Montrose says that pull request fixes the thing you hated. I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel bad because you watched the stream and then evidently you went back and fixed the code. I felt really bad for it because I just wanted to show my train of thinking. But yeah, I can see why you changed it. So let's hop in. These questions, some of them are going to be super straightforward. So the top voted question is from TheyBlameMe, who says, have you ever made it across the finish line for a customer by changing the way that their app connects to SQL Server, like changing between OLE DB versus ODBC? No. No. Look, they're not all long answers. Some of them are really short. Next up, Sleepless says, how often, if ever, do you use partially contained databases? Never. Never. What's the problem you're trying to solve is the classic question that you hear me answer, and I don't see a problem that those are trying to solve. If fully contained databases worked the way that the vision was supposed to work, that you could pick them up and move them to any server and everything would be inside them, including their agent jobs, their logins, passwords, all of that. Great, but they don't work that way, so it doesn't work worth a damn. Oh, Tom says, I'm coming to Vegas in September. If I see you on the strip, I'll buy you a cocktail. Ooh, Vegas is spectacular. I just can't say enough good stuff about Vegas. GUID says, with a GUID primary key on a large table, most new rows will land on 8K pages only containing old, obsolete data. Almost every new row has a whole 8K page in the buffer cache. The buffer cache will be mostly old, obsolete data. Am I missing something? Yes. Indexes. You have other indexes on the table, right? Take, for example, a customers table. I bet you have an index on customer name or customer location. And are you having everyone move into the database alphabetically? All right, all the customers that start with A, everyone who starts with A, move on in now, okay? Now we're on the B's. Sorry, Andy, you're not allowed to come in. We're done with the A's. I can't have fragmentation, you know. Only customers that begin with B's. No, of course not. Every index that you have exhibits the same problem that you're bitching about here on the screen. But it didn't stop you from creating indexes, did it? Sorry, I can't have any indexes. Fragmentation, you know. No, that's idiotic. So why would you get all religious about clustered indexes having that problem and then not give a damn about non-clustered indexes having that problem? And yet I see people doing it all the time. No, clustered index, they're the Antichrist if they're GUIDs. But go ahead and index customer name. That's completely fine. Think through that. Next up, Gökçe asks, what would you do when you notice a third-party vendor app is using NOLOCK like butter all over the TSQL queries? Have you experienced this? Yeah, I've experienced it many times, but you got to pick your battles, right? It's unlikely that you're going to be able to convince a vendor not to do that, especially if you don't work for the vendor. When you're going up against that, the vendor will say, but this works for us, and you have a real long uphill journey if you want to convince them otherwise. Shane, good to see you. Next up, Björgvin asks, Entity Framework is spamming the SQL plan cache with many duplicate plans. How do you deal with this issue? Go check out the plan caching module of my Mastering Server Tuning class, where we tell you how to tell if it's actually a problem for you, and if it is, how to go about fixing it. And no, changing from Entity Framework to something else will never work. Anastasios says, do you have any good stories where SQL Server was blamed for slow application performance, but it turned out to be something completely unrelated to the SQL Server? I have many. My favorite one is probably one where we got brought into, this is probably 10 years ago, we got brought into a performance tuning engagement. And one of the people who worked for me at the time, it wasn't me, was looking at the queries, and sure enough, they were all very slow, but it was because none of them had a where clause. And so the consultant kind of gently said, why don't you have where clauses on your queries? And the developers were like, what's a where clause? And on further discussion, we found out that the developers just thought that they had to filter things over on the application side. So they would get all the rows in the table and then only pick out the ones they wanted and show those to the user. And we showed them what a where clause was, and it was life-changing for them. MyTeaGotCold asks, has your opinion on agent jobs changed at all in the last 5 years? No. AWS Lambda, he follows up with, AWS Lambda and its kin seem to be replacing the task scheduler. Yes, as they should. Forever, I have said that you should not be doing application type stuff in agent jobs. Don't use agent as an application server. It's a terrible application server. It has crappy retry options. It has crappy alerting options. Go put application logic over in application code on application servers. So I felt that same way for forever. BMC, welcome to the live stream too. Stooky says, as SQL migrates from on-prem to the cloud, do you still see separation of duties between DBA and storage admins, or do you see those two roles combining into a single role? No, I don't see those two roles combining. I see storage admins and sysadmins combining. So sysadmins in the cloud tend to do infrastructure as code. They script out everything that they want for the VMs, for the infrastructure, or whatever. And they also tend to script out storage at the same time. So in most shops, the role of a dedicated storage admin is going away. As is always the case, the larger a company is, the more specialized some roles are. So if you're using software-defined storage, like those Silk products, for example, or NetApp up in the cloud, then you'll still probably have separate storage admins for those. But that's relatively a rarity as opposed to most shops. Good morning, SQL Pilot. B. Gallup says, what would you suggest my friend to use instead of linked servers? B. Gallup, I say the same thing every time and no one ever listens to me, so I'm not sure I should answer. Because I keep saying the same thing, and no one seems to understand. Whatever your application is should connect to the SQL server that has the data that it wants. So if you have a reporting application, go connect to the SQL server that has the data you want. If you have a C# application, in that C# application, build something called a connection string that connects to the SQL server you want. But the data that I want is spread across a lot of different places. Yes, you have to connect to them. Someone's going to have to do some work today, and that person is you. 'Cause it's not gonna be me. Over in chat says, Tom says, I could have answered that if I typed fast enough. Yeah, you know, when you hear me say the same things over and over again. Jay says, if only there was a tool to connect to multiple databases. No, you shouldn't be doing that because it's a distributed transaction. You should not be trying to hold locks across multiple servers at the same time to produce a set of query results. Don't do that. Blocking is bad. Take it from me. Rena says, is adding foreign keys just to get join elimination ever advised? This is a really good question. Is it ever advised? Yes. Not by me. I have just never seen a case where it didn't make more sense to change the query instead. Now, having said that, I am sure that there are other consultants somewhere who have used foreign keys in order to get join elimination and that took them across the finish line. I just have never had that in my career, but I'm sure that it is a valid piece of advice for someone who can't change queries. Me, I'm usually like, stop doing that. Persephone asks, what scripts do you like to use for Columnstore Index maintenance? Unfortunately, I don't like any of them, and I explain why in my Fundamentals of Columnstore class. It's a one-day training class that for like $90 is worth its weight in gold compared to the terrible lessons that you're going to have to learn when you go do Columnstore on big giant tables. Encino Man asks, is there a good way to determine if a given query is using the density vector or the histogram for cardinality estimates? There's not like a pop-up tooltip warning in SSMS, but your best guess is to just know at a glance, is that estimate absolutely insane? And if so, do you know the histogram or the density vector well enough on that table where you can go, yep, I know where that's coming from. But unfortunately, there's nothing built into the query plans that makes that easy. You have to go actually pop open the statistics to go see. Alex, check out the link on the screen there for where you ask your questions. Just because I have to keep track, we get so many questions in through there. This makes this a whole lot easier. Next up, Stooky says, for SQL Server, Microsoft recommends a minimum target for page life expectancy of 300 seconds. No, they don't. No, they don't. I don't know where that comes from. There are people who say that, but I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where it comes from. Go pull the link where you think it comes from, and you'll be like, oh, wait, they don't actually recommend that. Next up, let's see here. DBA Danny says, hey Brent, I'm working in an environment with multiple DBAs having sysadmin permissions. Are you aware of any way that we could audit who restarted SQL Server? No, not that I'm aware of. You could do a trace for people who run whatever the DBCC command is that's, I forget even. Boy, it's probably good that I don't remember it off the top of my head. That run the command to shut down SQL Server, but I don't think that's going to work for if you do it through SSMS and right-click restart, or if you do it through the services control panel, I don't think that that logs it that way either. So as far as I'm aware, there's not a way that would track TSQL commands, agent commands, or SSMS commands, and services control panel commands. There might be a way, I just don't know what it is. Prevo says shutdown is the command, so I guess DBCC shutdown with no wait, I think it is. I can't quite remember what that is. Huang says, what is your opinion of Azure NetApp files and Silk Cloud ISCSI for hosting Azure SQL VM data files? I have no opinion. I haven't used them at all. Oh, just shut down with no wait, Prevost says. On-site DBA says, I heard you mention Postgres as a cheaper alternative to Microsoft SQL Server, but you hardly ever mention MySQL. Is there a reason that you hardly mention MySQL? So for me, it was a performance thing. Like Postgres and MySQL didn't have the same levels of performance the last time that I looked, maybe 5-10 years ago. And so because of that, why would I recommend something slower 5-10 years ago? I don't think it's catching up. Postgres is on fire in terms of development. So that's just me. It may be better for all I know. I just haven't heard anybody saying that. I'd be curious if you find anyone saying, here are all the reasons that we used MySQL over Postgres, and see if it rings true for the kind of stuff that you need. I will say that there was a .com, and I can't remember if it was Twitter or if it was somebody else. It was some ginormous .com that switched over to MySQL from something else. But part of the reasoning was they had so much MySQL expertise to the point where they were coding C, in order to work around MySQL problems. And in that case, if you know the database platform very well, of course, that's a good reason. Kyle says, hi Brent, do you have a favorite wait type to fix and why? Probably resource semaphore. Just because it's one of those where it's really hard to detect through a lot of other methods that people do performance troubleshooting. And when you fix it, it just has this staggering impact on performance. Renegade, good to see you as well. Renzi says, what are your pros and cons of app-consistent snapshot backups versus crash-consistent snapshot backups for multi-terabyte databases? Crash-consistent, like the name says, is as if SQL Server crashed at that moment in time. Most of the time, SQL Server's pretty good about recovering from crashes, except for that one time when you need it to. Why the hell would I want that? Now, okay, so where are the edge cases where you do want it? There are some vendors who do, Pure Storage is a great example, that do crash consistent snapshots so well and so frequently without quiescing SQL Server's writes that if you couldn't get the one you wanted from this exact point in time, you could rewind 10 seconds before and you could take that version of the truth. And that's usually okay for people. But that's not what I see most people trying to do. They're trying to roll their own snapshots and they're doing crash consistent snapshots like every 4 hours or something. And I'm like, yeah, you don't want to lose 4 hours worth of data in most cases. Stooky Bill says, what are your thoughts on the top operator short-circuiting parallelism? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let me do a demo real quick to show you. So I'm gonna be typing this just off the top of my head, so God only knows if it's going to work or not. Select top 1 star from DBO, or we'll say Stack Overflow 2013 DBO users, order by reputation descending. So Stooky says that the top operator inhibits parallelism. Let's go see if that's true. You got parallelism right there. The only place that you don't have parallelism is all the way over there on the far left-hand side when all the work is already done. So where does that come from? So what you'll see is you'll see people doing like book learning and they'll say, oh, a top operator stops parallelism. It's right there on the plan. You have parallelism. You just don't have it in certain areas. It doesn't matter that the top operator inhibits parallelism in cases like that. You may have a case where it genuinely does cause problems on a query, but I would want to see that because I've never seen it in my own life where that was the problem that was causing us issues. Hey, David. Good to see you, David Rebo. Next up, let's see here. Chomping Bit says, why is it that the Microsoft-owned apps are always the worst offenders with SQL issues? Says SharePoint and SCCM have long-standing known issues with deadlocks. SCOM is a beast that spawns all kinds of GUID jobs. Scorch doesn't support availability groups. So the problem is Microsoft is a giant company. They're huge. And there are plenty of divisions and groups and products that are just slinging out their product, and they don't necessarily care about their impact on other departments like SQL or Windows. They can just say exactly the same as what they do in your company. That sounds like a SQL Server problem, not my problem, and then just keep on shipping code. Same thing with any big giant company. Next up, Argyris asks, do you have any good ways to find all the billion-row tables in a boxed SQL Server instance? Yes. SP Blitz Index, mode equals 2, sort order equals size. There's also a sort order equals rows parameter. So those are parameters for SP Blitz Index. The mode 2 parameter gives you the ability to export all the data in like a really Excel-friendly style. Next up, Alex says, do you oh, wait, hold on a second here. I clicked on it and it didn't happen. There we go. I probably didn't click. Alex says, huge fan. What's your opinion on why is it making me laugh? Because I have a huge fan downstairs. We have, long story, I literally have a huge fan downstairs in the house right now. What's your opinion on Azure Database Fleet? I've never even heard of it. Never even heard of it. And so my thing usually is anytime Microsoft says, hey, check this out, it's Azure Shadabrabra, coming out now, it's in a general preview. Wait until not only it goes past preview into general availability, but also wait until maybe a few months after that and make sure that it actually gets active development. Because Microsoft has this problem, this habit of throwing poop against the wall to see what sticks. And there's a whole lot of diarrhea in there that does not stick to the wall. Pizzarama says, says, hi Brent, when we update our customers' databases, a lot of them are still on SQL Server 2008 R2. I know I didn't read that right. You must have had a typo or something. Because did you really say that you're allowing your customers to run a version of SQL Server that's so old it can drive a car, and that it's so old Microsoft won't even support it anymore? Did you really say that? It's probably not old enough to drive a car, maybe illegally in some places. It's your responsibility as a software vendor to say we don't support that. You need to have a document that allows the things this is acceptable for your customers to do, this is not acceptable for your customers to do. And I don't give a damn if they say, that's really expensive. Yes, IT is expensive. It's expensive to have databases. And if you can't afford that, move to something cheap like Azure SQL DB, where they'll do the hosting for you on really tiny databases. But I'm not going to answer a 2008 R2 question in the year 2023. Yes, I know what year it is. I don't have the year on my watch, but you get the general idea out of that. Next up, Toymaker says, is there ever a value in performance testing queries cold versus hot? For me, not at all. Do you really need to load test what's going to happen when SQL Server first starts up? No, it's going to be slow. It's going to be slow when SQL Server just starts up. There's no rocket surgery involved in that, so don't test that way. Next up, would prefer third normal form says, have you ever heard of a ceiling or threshold for XML columns beyond which performance craters? We're scared by too large XML columns. They're currently performing adequately, but they compromise about 40% of our terabyte and a half database, and they continue to grow. It depends on whether or not you're filtering on stuff inside of those columns. If you're actively filtering by specific nodes of the XML, then yeah, you're going to run into problems with performance as the database grows because the size of the index, the XML index, can grow exponentially depending on what you're putting inside of there. What I would say is check out computed columns, especially indexed computed columns. If you need to frequently filter on specific parts of the XML, you can actually persist those as columns and then you index them regularly, and that has much better performance effects than trying to index the entire XML, the vast majority of which you will never use. Next up, Kane says, I was literally typing a question around SQL versus Postgres while I was watching your last video, and you spelled it out, so I figured I should let you know thanks instead. You're welcome. My pleasure. Oh, hi, G-Surgeon from the Netherlands. And then let's see here. Oh, only a couple left. Bonnie says, how do you run SPBlitzCache to target a temporary stored procedure? I don't know why you would do that. Yeah, SPBlitzCache isn't really a code analysis tool. SPBlitzCache is really about telling you the most resource-intensive queries on the system. If you want personalized code analysis, focus on the production code, not temporary stored procedures. And then finally, last up, Bottomless says, Azure SQL DB Serverless is supposed to cost less, but at the end of the month it costs more than our DTUs because our software as a service has routines and jobs that wake up the database. Why? 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 You're the problem. It's you. What you want to do is you want to go lower on, you don't want to have continuous routines and jobs that wake up the database, because if you do, then you're never going to get to pause with Azure SQL DB. Now, I'm not a fan of this. Azure SQL DB only shuts down after minutes, whereas Amazon Aurora Serverless shuts down after, not shuts down, but goes all the way down to half a core within milliseconds. Like we watch our SQL Constant Care database go up and down in terms of milliseconds. It'll scale up and down. But Azure SQL DB Serverless just isn't that product. So he continues on, from your experience, have you ever seen a successful use of Azure SQL DB Serverless? So for me, no, because the scale up and scale down is so slow that it usually makes more sense to just either manually scale it yourself, like overnight, maybe you drop it down to a certain core speed, and then in the morning before customers come in, you scale it back up ahead of time. But that's up to you. That's not something that's built directly into serverless because it doesn't respond quickly enough. Shane says, man, some of these questions are so strange, I have to get weird with my SQL servers. I know when I first started doing office hours years ago, back when we still had a whole team of folks at Brent Unlimited, our first thought was, well, we're going to answer questions for like a month or two, but then the questions will be done. There won't be that many more questions to ask. And yet the questions still keep pouring in continuously. It's always amazing to see the number of questions that we get in through here. All right, so we've been going for about half an hour. I will stop here. I'm going to go work on the first responder kit pull requests and then wrap things up for the holidays. I hope y'all have a very wonderful holidays, and I will see y'all in the new year. Adios, folks.